Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Class Superlatives for this USC 2024 high school recruiting class. We got 5 superlatives to give out. This was a very fun practice for me and gives me an opportunity to talk about some guys that are really kind of my guys for this USC class in 2024. We got 5 superlatives to give out. The first one being the prospect with most likely to have a first-year impact. The second one, the highest NFL draft pick. The third one, most likely to outperform their star rating. Number 4, class MVP. And then number 5, the high-risk, high-reward prospect in this 2024 class. Fired up to get into this one. This was a USC class that we've been covering since the early summer months of 2023. And now you kind of get to tie a bow on this class in 2024 as they enter spring practice. Really fired up to get into it. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys and a massive shout out, as always, to the USC fans, a program that the deep dives have been a blast to do, covering this team on the high school recruiting trail and in the transfer portal. And the amount of support you guys have shown the boys, it means the world. Cannot thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And more importantly, would love to hear your options for these class superlatives in the comment section. This was a hard one to do, right? There was only 5 names that we could choose from, and there's a lot of good players in this 2024 class. And without further ado, let's get into this one. And I want to start with the superlative for the player that I think has the highest impact as a first-year player for this USC program, and that's going to go to Cam Fountain. And this is a guy that we've covered a lot during the last couple of months, one of the top defensive linemen in this 2024 cycle. And the reason I go with Cam Fountain to make a year one impact is kind of a combination of 2 things. When you're looking at true freshmen to make that year one impact, kind of 2 things have to come together. One, that prospect needs to be physically developed so they're ready to hit the field at the college level and make an impact. But more importantly, there needs to be room on the depth chart. And I think you look at that edge rusher position, and a guy like Cam Fountain can do a lot of different things, but I think can certainly crack the rotation for this USC defensive line at that edge position. And again, am I saying he's going to be a starter year one? Maybe not, but he's going to be a guy that it's hard to see him not having significant opportunity to make an impact for this program year one, a guy that physically ready. I think the depth chart allows him to have some opportunity. And the thing that really stood out to me going back, kind of watching some of the film, is Cam Fountain plays the run extremely well. And that's one of those things that you see true freshmen really struggle with on the defensive line. Yeah, they might be twitched up, be able to get after the passer, which Cam Fountain certainly can do. But can you also hold up against the run? Because that's going to be the stuff that allows you to get on the field early as a true freshman. I think Cam Fountain certainly can do that. He's a box checker, can win with power right through tackles, can win with that twitch, burst, and bend, going around tackles. Give me Cam Fountain as a guy that makes a year one impact for this USC program in 2024. Next one we're going to, highest NFL draft pick of this 2024 class. This one's going to shock a lot of people. Well, if the USC fans have been listening for the last couple of weeks, it might not shock some people, but it might shock some new listeners. And that is Gday Abari, coming from the state of Minnesota, 3-star prospect. I am a massive fan of what Gday Abari brings to the table. I think he is criminally underrated, according to some of these recruiting services. And you talk about upside with a guy like Gday Abari. I think this guy's the limit. And you look at what he brings to the table, 6'5", 290 pounds. You go back to the senior year film, you just take a look at a guy like Gday Abari and say, yeah, he carries 290 exceptionally. He just moves a little bit different for a guy that's 290 pounds, has phenomenal length in his arms, a guy that is going to be able to win with his athleticism, but also as he continues to put on weight, I think that speed to power with the length that he has, the ability to get his hands on offensive linemen is going to allow him to win as well. And so maybe not a first-year impact for a guy like Gday Abari, because I do think he needs to refine some things. He's new to the sport, but I think he's just scratching the surface in terms of what he can do as an interior defensive lineman at the college football level. 2025, 2026, I think we're going to be talking a lot about a guy like Gday Abari. Give me him to be the highest NFL draft pick in this USC class of 2024. Next one we're going to is most likely to outperform their star ranking, and Gday Abari certainly could have been an argument for this one. I'm going to go with safety Marquise Gallegos from the state of California. And we talked about him when he committed to USC in the summer. And the first thing you talk about with a guy like Marquise Gallegos is the instincts that he has. This is a guy that when you turn on the film, it's just right place, right time every single time. And when you look at safeties and what you want in those guys, and quite frankly, what you just didn't see enough of from those USC safeties the last couple of years, is guys that are able to diagnose what's in front of them, be able to be in the right spot, make the plays when you need to. Marquise Gallegos, checks that box in a massive way. You look at what he's done at the high school level, 17 interceptions during his high school career. He had 7 interceptions as a junior in high school. This is a guy that I think gets slept on a little bit according to the recruiting services because he doesn't have a track background. He's not necessarily physically the most imposing safety prospect coming out of this 2024 class. But when you turn on the film, this guy's a football player. And I think sometimes these recruiting services lean a little too heavy on the physical traits and not enough just scouting the actual player that has the helmet and has the pads on Friday night. Marquise Gallegos is a guy that just gets the position. You talk about a guy that in 3 years we're talking about as an all Big Ten performer, as a guy that's going to the NFL draft. I think Marquise Gallegos is going to be a name that we're talking a lot about. Next superlative, class MVP. Now, kind of how I define this is when you look back on this class in 4 to 5 years, what player are you pointing at and saying, yeah, that guy led to a lot of wins for this USC program? And I'm going to the number 1 commit in their class, and that's interior offensive lineman Jason Zandel, a guy that probably needs a year, similar to a guy like Gday Abari in terms of, all right, 6'3", 285 pounds, another guy that is new to the sport of football, played rugby as a kid. But you turn on the film of Jason Zandel, the first thing that pops off to you is the athleticism. And this is a guy that, again, carries that 285 exceptionally well, very good in pass protection because he's a phenomenal athlete at that center position. But more importantly, you talk about centers working up to the second level, making blocks in space, getting hats on safeties and linebackers. That's where Jason Zandel excels. So you take a year, get some weight on Jason Zandel, get him up to 300-plus pounds. This is a guy that I think is going to be a phenomenal center. And the reason I'm picking him as the class MVP is you look at USC going to the Big Ten. How massive could it be to have just a stalwart center for the next couple of years in Jason Zandel, who just kind of locks down that offensive line? Having a solid center is massively important to that offensive line function. I think Jason Zandel can be that guy. Again, you fast forward the clock, I guess, 4 years down the road, and you're looking at this 2024 class and trying to point to players that really spurred this program in the right direction. I think Jason Zandel at that center spot going into the Big Ten is going to be the name that we're talking about the most. And the last guy I want to talk about, this superlative, goes to the high-risk, high-reward prospect. And, at the end of the day, you're going to bring in 20-plus commits in this USC class. Not every single one is going to be an all-pro in the NFL, right? Some guys are going to miss. A guy that I think has high upside, but also maybe a little bit more, I don't want to use the word bust potential, but maybe some downside as well. Linebacker Jaden Walker from the state of Michigan. This was a phenomenal get for USC late in this process. You pried him away from Michigan State. The reason I have Jaden Walker as my high reward, high risk guy kind of reminds me of Tacky Curtis a little bit, right? Jaden Walker moving from that safety spot to that linebacker spot. And when you turn on the film, you kind of get reminded of Tacky Curtis. This is a guy that plays with his hair on fire, just hitting everything that he sees in front of him. And there's a lot of good to have in that, right? You want your linebackers that are playing fast, that are playing violently. Jaden Walker, certainly resembles that. But you also saw the downsides of that with Tacky Curtis as a true freshman. Now, I think Jaden Walker has one thing going for him, and that is Alex Grinch is no longer running this defense. I think Tacky Curtis would have been a phenomenal linebacker for USC, given some time to develop, but they threw him out there as a true freshman, and he just wasn't ready between the years. Physically, Tacky Curtis was very much ready, but wasn't really ready mentally. And so a guy like Jaden Walker, you get some Tacky Curtis vibes, but I think that's a good thing. Because, again, if Tacky Curtis was a guy that kind of put it together between the years, you were looking at an all-conference linebacker Curtis. Jaden Walker kind of reminds me a little bit of how Tacky Curtis plays with that violence and the aggression. Now, yeah, a couple of risks are 6'3", 210, a little bit smaller. Got to put some weight on him. I think this is a guy that if he figures it out, puts it together, you're looking at a very exciting linebacker that can go sideline to sideline, blitz off the edge, drop back in coverage, kind of do everything you want in a modern day linebacker. So give me Jaden Walker as that high risk, high reward prospect. A ton of names that we didn't get to mention. And you go back to that class in 2022, a couple of guys that I just wanted to give honorary mentions to. First guy being Carlin Jones from the state of Texas, a guy that had 17 sacks, 23 tackles for a loss during his junior year, put on some weight, going to move into the inside. Really, really big fan of Carlin Jones. And then the other guy I want to mention real quick is Walter Matthews, a guy that is 6'7", 245 pounds. I could see him being an extremely dynamic red zone threat for USC. Didn't make the list for any of my superlatives, but two guys that I think are flying a little bit under the radar in this USC class in 2024. Spring practice starting up. We're going to get our first chance to get the vibes on some of these guys and what they look like if they are early enrollees. Really excited to cover this class. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. I think our direction now is pointed to that 2025 class, but wanted to hop on, tie a little bit of a bow on this class in 2024. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.